From engines that shut themselves off at red lights, to transmissions constantly hunting for the highest gear, to torque converters locking and unlocking in stop-and-go traffic. Many of the smart features built into modern automatic cars are quietly putting extra stress on the drivetrain. And the problem is, most daily drivers think this behavior is completely normal. After reviewing service records, warranty claims, and real-world failure data, one thing is clear. These systems weren't built to save you money. They were built to help automakers hit government fuel economy numbers. But over time, these systems can wear down starters, transmissions, valve trains, and internal engine components long before 200,000 miles. And most drivers don't notice the damage building. Until the transmission starts slipping, the lifters begin ticking, or a $4,000 repair bill shows up out of nowhere. Today, I'm breaking down the 9 automatic car features that kill your engine and transmission before 200,000 miles and why drivers rarely notice the damage. And at the end, I'll show you which of these systems you can disable and which ones you need to monitor before they cost you thousands. Let's dive in. Number 9. Start-stop systems. Let's save gas by repeatedly stressing the parts that start your engine. That's the hidden trade-off behind start-stop systems. Every red light, your engine shuts off. Light turns green, it jolts back to life like it just got shocked away. Do that hundreds of times a week and you're not saving your engine. You're cycling it to death. Starters weren't built for 100,000 plus restarts. Batteries weren't designed to be drained and slammed back to full load constantly. And oil pressure, it drops to zero every single time that engine shuts down. Exactly when your engine needs protection most. In cold weather, it's worse. In traffic, it's worse. On high-mileage engines, even worse. Consumer Reports found vehicles with start-stop systems burn through batteries up to 40% faster. And these aren't cheap batteries. We're talking a GM or FB replacements, $250 to $500 easy. And the fuel savings, maybe $60 to $80 a year for the average US driver. One dead battery wiped that out. One starter replacement, you're in the red. Here's the part nobody tells you. This system wasn't built to protect your engine. It was built to help manufacturers pass EPA fuel economy and emissions tests. On paper, it looks efficient. In real life, it accelerates wear. If you care about longevity, turn it off. And if your car doesn't remember that setting, consider a memory module. Just check your warranty first. Because when compliance comes before durability, your wallet usually pays the difference. Start-stop isn't about protecting your engine. It's about hitting emissions targets. And if shutting the engine off constantly adds wear. Wait until you see what happens when manufacturers start shutting cylinders off while you're still driving. Number 8. Cylinder deactivation. On paper, it sounds brilliant. Cruising on the highway, shut down a few cylinders, save fuel, boost MPG. That's the sales pitch. In real life, it's mechanical roulette. Systems like GM's AFM, Chrysler's MDS, and some versions of Honda's VCM shut cylinders off mid-drive, then fire them back up like nothing happened. But metal doesn't forget. Every time those cylinders switch on and off, you're changing temperature, pressure, and oil flow inside the engine over and over. That uneven load. It destroys lifters, it collapses valves, it creates misfires, and sometimes it totals the engine. I've seen trucks with under 60,000 miles come in with lifters chewed flat. Ram 5.7 HEMIS, GM 5.3 and 6.2 V8S. Some failures happen before 50,000 miles. And when it goes, you're not replacing a sensor. You're replacing an engine, $3,500, sometimes more, and the fuel savings, a couple MPG on the highway, maybe a few $100 over years of driving. One collapsed lifter wiped that out instantly. Some owners don't even realize what's happening at first. They just notice oil disappearing, topping off every week like it's normal. It's not. That ticking sound, that's not character. That's money leaving your wallet. Here's the truth most people never hear. This system wasn't built to protect your engine. It was built to help manufacturers hit federal fuel economy targets. It looks efficient on paper, but engines are designed to run consistently, not to switch personalities mid-drive. If your vehicle allows it, disabling cylinder deactivation can mean smoother operation and fewer long-term risks. Because fuel economy means nothing if the engine doesn't make it past 150,000 miles. Turning half your engine off mid-drive might look efficient on paper, but if constant on-off cycling damages lifters and valves, imagine what happens when fuel delivery itself changes the way your engine breathes. Let's talk about direct injection. Number 7. Direct injection engines. Direct injection sounds like a high-tech upgrade. More power, better fuel economy, cleaner emissions. That's what the brochure says. Here's what it doesn't say. Traditional engines used port injection. Fuel sprayed over the intake valves, naturally washing them clean every time you drove. Direct injection skips that step. Fuel goes straight into the combustion chamber. The intake valves, they never get clean. So over time, carbon builds up, thick, sticky, baked on sludge. And here's the part most drivers don't realize. You can't fix this with a bottle of fuel cleaner. The carbon isn't in the fuel system, it's welded onto the valves. The only real fix, walnut blasting. Shops literally blast crushed walnut shells into your engine to scrape the carbon off. Cost $400 to $900 in most US markets, sometimes more on luxury models. BMW, Audi, VW, Mazda, even some Hondas. They've all dealt with heavy buildup complaints over the years. Now, some manufacturers got smarter. Toyota, for example, started combining port and direct injection to reduce buildup. That's the safer setup. But millions of engines on the road today, direct injection only. And the fuel savings, a slight bump in MPG. The long-term trade-off, recurring carbon cleaning, reduced drivability, potential valve damage, lower resale value. Again, this wasn't engineered to extend engine life. It was engineered to hit emissions and fuel economy targets. On paper, it looks efficient. Over 150,000 miles, it can quietly become expensive. If your engine starts coughing at idle or hesitating under load, it's not asking for premium fuel. It's asking for a cleaning bill. Skipping the intake valves might improve emissions numbers, but when efficiency starts rewriting core engine design, it doesn't stop there. Because some manufacturers went even further, reducing internal friction inside the engine itself. And that's where low-tension piston rings come in. Number 6. Low-tension piston rings. Low-tension piston rings were sold as an efficiency breakthrough. Less friction, better MPG, cleaner emissions. That's the headline. Here's the fine print. Piston rings are supposed to seal the combustion chamber. They keep oil down and compression up. When you reduce ring tension to cut drag, you also reduce how well they seal. On paper, you gain a little fuel economy. In the real world, oil slips past the rings and burns inside the engine. No puddle in your driveway. No obviously, just disappearing oil. By 50,000 to 60,000 miles. Some drivers are topping off every few weeks, thinking it's normal. It's not. Subaru FA20, GM Ecotec 2.4L, some Mazda Skyactiv engines all have documented oil consumption complaints tied to low-tension ring design. And once oil burning starts, it doesn't magically reverse. Carbon builds. Compression drops. Catalytic converters suffer. Engines wear faster. Then comes the real bill. $4,000, $5,000, sometimes $7,000 for a rebuild or replacement. All to gain a slight MPG bump during a federal test cycle. Again, this wasn't engineered for longevity. It was engineered to hit fuel economy targets. Daily drivers don't want to carry quarts of oil in the trunk like it's 1975. They want an engine that runs to 100,000 miles without drama. Low-tension rings might improve a spreadsheet, but over 150,000 miles, they can quietly shorten your engine's life. And when the oil light comes on early, that's not bad luck. That's compliance engineering catching up. So now we've reduced oil control to squeeze out better MPG. But compliance engineering doesn't stop inside the engine. It also changes how your electrical system operates. And that can leave you stranded just as fast. Let's look at variable charging systems. If you care about keeping your car past 150,000 miles, subscribe. We don't guess here, we follow the failure patterns. And the next one, it's everywhere. Number 5. Variable charging systems. This one sounds smart. Charge the battery only when needed. Reduce alternator drag. Save fuel. That's the pitch. Instead of constantly charging your battery like older systems did, variable charging adjusts voltage based on engine load, speed, and electrical demand. On a government fuel economy test, it works beautifully. In real-world driving, not so much. Because your battery doesn't care about EPA test cycles. It cares about consistent charging. Short trips, cold starts, heavy electrical use, heated seats, headlights, infotainment, defrosters. That's where these systems start falling behind. Instead of keeping the battery topped off, they often undercharge it. Over time, that means weakened batteries, voltage fluctuations, random electronic glitches, premature alternator failure. And when it finally quits, it doesn't always give you a warning. It just leaves you stranded. Diagnosis isn't simple either. This isn't a basic alternator swap anymore. These systems are integrated, electronically controlled, and tied into multiple modules. Replacement cost, $700, $900, sometimes more depending on the vehicle. And again, what was the goal? Reduce drag to squeeze out a little more fuel efficiency. Another example of chasing MPG numbers on paper. While everyday drivers deal with the fallout, a battery system should be boring. it should just work. But when efficiency becomes the priority, reliability usually takes the hit. If even your alternator is being programmed around fuel economy tests, then nothing in the vehicle is truly operating the way it used to. And that mindset carries over into how your car manages power and performance on the road. That brings us to Eco Mode. Number 4. Eco Mode highway driving. Eco Mode sounds harmless. Better fuel economy, smoother throttle, lower fuel costs. That's the marketing. But once you hit the highway, it's a different story. Eco Mode dulls throttle response to reduce fuel consumption, which means when you need power, merging onto I-95, passing a semi, climbing a long grade, your engine hesitates. You press the pedal, it thinks about it. That delay isn't saving your engine, it's loading it. Some systems also force earlier upshifts and keep the transmission in higher gears longer than normal. On paper, that improves MPG. In real-world highway driving, it can lug the engine under load, lower RPM, higher strain, more throttle input just to maintain speed. Instead of running efficiently, the engine ends up working harder to compensate for restricted response. You feel it as sluggishness, but internally, it's increased stress. And here's the key difference. Eco Mode was calibrated around controlled fuel economy testing, not real US highway traffic at 70 to 80 miles per hour. Around town, fine. On long highway drives, it can make your engine feel like it's fighting itself. Fuel savings, minimal. But the driving experience, and sometimes long-term strain, takes the hit. If you're cruising at highway speeds, turn it off. Let the engine operate the way it was originally designed to. Because when software starts limiting performance for test numbers, durability isn't the priority. Restricting throttle response might help a test cycle, but the real trend here is clear. Smaller engines, higher stress, more pressure, and nowhere is that more obvious than in turbocharged engines. Number 3. Automatic climate control. Automatic climate control sounds like luxury. Set the temperature once, let the car handle the rest. Comfort on demand, that's the promise. But here's what most drivers don't notice. These systems are constantly adjusting. Fan speed up, compressor on, compressor off, blend doors moving, sensors recalculating. All to maintain a temperature that doesn't need that much precision. At startup, it often blasts the fan at full speed even when the engine isn't fully warm. A few minutes later, it overcorrects. Now it's freezing you out, or fogging up the windshield. Because interior sensors don't always reflect real-world humidity, sunlight, or cabin heat load accurately. And here's the mechanical side most people miss. Every time that AC compressor cycles on and off, that's wear. Every adjustment to blower motors and actuators, that's movement, that's strain. The system is chasing efficiency and precise temperature control, but it's doing it through constant modulation. More cycling means more compressor engagement, more electrical draw, more actuator wears, more long-term failure points. Manual systems, they're simple. Set the fan, set the temperature, leave it alone. Fewer adjustments, less cycling, less strain. Automatic climate control isn't catastrophic overnight, but over 100,000 miles. All that constant correcting adds up. Again, it looks smart on paper, but long-term durability wasn't the priority. Precision was. And when efficiency and electronics take over basic functions, complexity always increases. More boost, more heat, more stress. And when manufacturers start downsizing engines to meet efficiency targets, they don't just add turbos, they start cutting weight everywhere else, even in places you used to rely on. Let's talk about what disappeared from your trunk. Number 2. Turbocharged engines. Turbocharged engines feel impressive. More power from a smaller engine, better MPG, stronger torque. That's the marketing. But here's what that boost really does. It adds pressure, a lot of it. More pressure means more heat. More heat means more stress. Gaskets, seals, pistons, head bolts, cooling systems. Every component is working harder than it would in a naturally aspirated setup. You're not just driving with extra power, you're driving with extra strain under the hood. And why did this trend explode? Because smaller turbocharged engines help manufacturers meet federal fuel economy and emission standards. On paper, they look efficient. In the real world, you've got more parts, more plumbing, more heat, more things that can fail. When a turbo goes, it doesn't whisper. You're looking at $1,500 to $1,000. Sometimes much more once labor and related damage are factored in. Some manufacturers build solid turbo systems. Toyota's newer 2.4L, Honda's K20C, certain Mazda, Subaru, BMW, and VW platforms. But even then, maintenance matters more. Oil changes matter more. Cooling matters more, because forced induction magnifies wear. Naturally aspirated engines, simpler, fewer parts, lower stress, often longer life. Turbos deliver thrill today, but over 150,000 miles, they often trade excitement for lifespan. Again, this wasn't about building the longest-lasting engine. It was about extracting more power from less displacement to satisfy efficiency targets. Boost helps pass tests. Heat shortens durability. A missing spare tire might not seem like a big deal, but it's another example of weight reduction for fuel economy, with the cost shifted directly to you. And what we just covered, that's only one category of modern shortcuts, because the next set of features isn't about emissions at all. It's about electronics replacing reliability. And that's where repair bills really start climbing. Number 1. Tire mobility kits. You used to open your trunk and see something reassuring. A full-size spare, real rubber, real backup, real peace of mind. Today, you get a can of sealant and a tiny compressor. Manufacturers call it weight reduction, fuel efficiency improvement, modern packaging. Let's call it what it is. Cutting weight to help hit MPG numbers, because removing a spare saves 30 to 40 pounds. And that helps on a federal fuel economy test. But here's the real world problem. That little can of goo won't fix a sidewall tear. It won't help with a blowout. It won't save you from shredded tread on the interstate. If you're driving 75 miles per hour on a US highway and a tire fails, you don't need sealant, you need a spare. What used to be a 5-minute roadside tire swap is now a 90-minute wait for a tow truck. And it gets worse. That sealant, it can clog tire pressure sensors. It can make the tire unrepairable. Some shops won't even touch a tire once that stuff's inside. Now you're buying a new tire, possibly a new TPMS sensor, and maybe paying for a tow. All because the manufacturer wanted to shave weight for fuel economy numbers. Again, this wasn't about improving durability. It was about improving efficiency ratings. Cost savings for them. Cost transfer to you. Convenience on paper. Stranded on the shoulder in real life. You've just seen how fuel economy targets can quietly shorten engine life. But here's the part most drivers never realize. The next category isn't about emissions. It's about electronics replacing durability. And those failures, they hit even faster. Subscribe and don't miss what's coming next.